Hi, everyone. Welcome to the For Animals for Earth show. Today, we are on episode number 68. Oh, my goodness. And we are talking about ways that we may be promoting anti-Blackness in sustainability without even knowing it. So I am joined today by Reketta Peterson. Hi, Reketta.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, I'm so happy you're here. And I am just so looking forward to this conversation. So, for everyone that's watching, Reketta is a BIPOC health equity consultant. She's a therapist, she's an author. She's all about inclusivity and bringing people together. And I feel, like you're really about not solving problems on the surface and not, yes, taking steps to solve problems, but really digging in and really allowing people to have the space to talk and share and understanding each other and just kind of solving problems through, I would say, like compassion. I really want to start with your story. Like, tell us a little bit about you and, why you're doing the work that you do.
hmm So, everyone out there listening, it might seem strange that I am a health consultant, health equity consultant, speaking about, environmentalism and sustainability. But with it being under the umbrella of anti-Blackness, I feel like that's our common thread right there. And I came into this space as a Black woman who gave birth three times, once in the pandemic, and having the health disparities and the potential to um, lose either my child or my own life, and having it that high, as high as 2.8 times what my white counterpart or white friend would have to experience. I think that's so important to name. And so I did all the things. I had a doula, I made sure I was present with my doctor and everything, but I can only do so much on my end when it comes to being an actual patient. It's also about the provider checking their biases. And that's why I'm so happy to be here today, because we are opening awareness for this. And I do just want to touch on the things that we talk about today. If you feel some resistance, that's okay. I think that's normal because it's a new conversation. Maybe you also want to do some research on your own, but just naming it is the first step. Once you're able to say, I don't know, I feel a certain way about this, that's all you have to say. And you can go back and research. No one's questioning you or asking you to completely overhaul what you've known your entire life. It's just an opportunity to open up the conversation. And finally, on that note, I do want to say, I feel like we should operate from a lens of yes and. That's what I tell my clients. That's what I tell myself. Yes, I see that the planet is not doing as well as it could, and I can be compassionate for all.
When you and I met, one of the very first things you said to me was that you find that environmentalists are very often promoting anti-Blackness. And, I wondered, what does she mean by that? And so, I asked you, what do you mean by that? Like, what is happening? What are people doing in general that you feel like is promoting anti-Blackness?
I think that's like an amazing starter question. I,
Like, go big. What's
so I already had my own personal ideas, but I like to back it up with facts, as you said earlier. What I found first was like, oh my gosh, I need to put that on the show. Was It was like environmentalist groups. I don't want to name any major names. The majority of these groups are run by white males and cis hetero white males. The amount of people of color that are actually in these spaces, they are always at the bottom tier. They cannot move up in the ranks. There's another problem there. And some of these companies, organizations, agencies, they didn't allow people of color to be in the conversation about how they could have better sustainability within their own areas and abroad, just globally. So I do want to name that. And so when it comes to anti-Blackness, and we'll get into this a bit more later, it's almost as if, one, we might be a little hypocritical, saying that we want rights for all, but when someone steps to you and say, hey, I'm feeling unheard or unseen, you're dismissive. And so I just want to bring that into the conversation as we begin to dive in today.
Yeah, that is really interesting, because I think that is another little nugget that we can all just kind of take and try to keep in mind, is not being dismissive. And, you know, I mean, I guess that's anytime anyone is sharing their feelings with us, that'd probably go a long way in the world, period, right? Like if we could just all like actually acknowledge people's feelings and where they're coming from, and not, I guess, dismiss them with our own lenses of what they're coming forth with. I mean, I'm just thinking about how I could do better with my husband on that. You know, it's like on a totally different level,
Right.
but you know, it's like I'll have certain lenses about where he's coming from when he comes forward with stuff. And I think there's probably a lot to just like, yeah, listening and not being dismissive. And that's just such an easy little like kind of slogan to keep in your head, you know?
And being inclusive as well. You know, inviting people into the conversation, such as like this. Like, I think this is an important opportunity that you afforded not only me, but your listeners, having these conversations. Even though it's tough, we are actually taking a step in the right direction.
I agree. You know, it's and another like great thing, I'm already seeing like there's a couple of like words coming out, you know, that I'll be able to kind of put into our show notes here that I feel like could be just little slogans to keep top of mind, but inclusive as well. Like, hey, like, are there more people I can invite to this conversation so that more people can bring in more perspectives? Because I mean, I'd be interested to hear if you see this, but at least through my experience in life, I would say 9 times out of 10, bringing more people into the conversation came up with like a better outcome, even though it took longer to get to a decision. You know, there was a lot more debate. Sometimes it gets anxious in there, you know, when things get heated. But then in the end, you always end up with something better because so many different thoughts and backgrounds and perspectives came into it.
Yes, yes, because like you mentioned earlier, there are different lenses. So maybe someone saw something that you were not able to see. And vice versa, you may have seen something that the other person could not see at the time or the moment. So I like all of that. Just perspectives are everything.
And I love thinking about it as they're just truly different lenses. So it's not like we need to necessarily beat ourselves up for not seeing something because we didn't have the realm to see that. It wasn't within our view. But if you hear it from others, then you can start to like open up to hear that idea, right? So yeah, really cool.
I think you named something really important, is that when we talk about privilege, that is exactly what we're saying. No one's blaming you for having the privilege and being unaware, not having that lens, because you were unaware. You didn't know that, oh, this is what it means to not have a functional body, or promote ableism or anti-Blackness. But just coming here and learning and touching on things and just being more aware, that's the first step.
Let's talk about, you know, anti-Blackness and sustainability. We put together 3 different areas that we thought would be interesting to talk about. Hopefully you all enjoy hearing them as well. We're going to talk through population control, veganism, and consumerism, and all from perspectives of what Reketta has experienced in her own life and what she thinks would be better. And those are just 3 areas, obviously, of sustainability. I mean, there's so many facets to it, and we can't talk about them all. So we just thought we would dabble in these 3. So let's kick off with population control. This is something that is often talked about within environmental circles around what would be like a solution to our human species surviving on the planet. So let me pass the mic to you. Like, what have you seen in the realm of population control that you, maybe have been disappointed in ways that you think that it could be discussed better?
Yes. So, in my own personal space, I wanted to say I've seen on blog posts and social media comments that are, to me, somewhat snarky, stating that, well, if we didn't have as many people on the planet, or if people wouldn't just give birth to so many children and things of that nature, the planet will be better off. On top of that, we have eugenics and Margaret Sanger and things like that, where we were told that only the best breed should survive. And that's really a strong word, I know, but that's just how it was back in the day. And we understand that we might not have those ideas present day, but the trauma of that still lingers. It lingers within our body, it lingers within the policies that come up. And I do want to mention, this is why we talk about systemic racism. There are policies in place that make it difficult. And that's a whole nother topic for another day with what's going on present day with Roe versus Wade. But the thing is, some of the practices are here today. And so when it comes to only wanting the perfect person, ideally that was like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed individual and not someone that was of color, not a Black person. So I do want to name that. And so when it comes to population control with my research now, switching gears a little bit, it was a book from Paul Enrich, and we can link that out as well in your notes if you don't mind. He had a book that came out in the 60s from his travels to this global south, India and China. And he said that there was a lot of population control that could be possible and that could possibly decrease the pollution that was in those areas. Present day, the research says that the global south actually does not produce as much pollution as we do in a developed country. So I do want to name that. And before I get off my high horse, I do want to name that it appears anti-Black when we spit out some things that are not necessarily true. It might have been true for you, and I understand that as well. But the research is saying that actually, no, it is okay to have, I don't want to say a lot of children because of present day, college and things like that. But that's
College.
But it is okay for us to live the way we want to live. And I just want to name that too, living the way we want to live.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's something that kind of makes me emotional because I can't imagine there ever being something bad or it being wrong to bring living beings into the world. I get it if you take, this like not microscopic, what is it, like telescopic look, like way, like you zoom way out and you just kind of turn something into like an issue. Oh my gosh, where are my words? I feel like you could maybe say that if you're just looking at like data or facts, but then it's like you take a look at like, what are we as human beings? Like every single one of us is a unique soul that came into this earth for a reason. And every single one of us provides so much value to the world by being here. And so it's like, how can we say like, oh, there should just be less souls in the world and that solves the problem? Like, to me, I just don't see that. And then on top of that, saying that one type of person or soul is better than another, it's like, yeah, obviously not true. And hopefully, like you said, it's a perspective that maybe someone had, and for whatever reason, their world made them think that. But hopefully now, as we're sharing more information is passing around the world, we are actually understanding that every single one of us is so equally important and brings so much to the equation. And like, there's no way that one certain type is better than another, you know? Yeah. Gosh. Okay. So, there was one
That
other
was
thing you,
beautiful.
sorry, I
It
like
was.
it,
Thank you for
you know,
that.
I get emotional and then my words can't come. This is like a story of Brandy. It's like trying to find words are not easy. Oh my gosh. But another thing that you know, said right at the end is to, I don't remember your exact words, but it was basically like, let people have their own choices and let people live their lives the way that they choose to. And I just think there's so much to be said for that. I mean, you know, here in the US, it's like we've been built on freedom, right? Even though none, we obviously have learned that that actually wasn't like playing out, but at least the
Mhm.
philosophy of it, the idea of it was that people should be able to make their own choices. And it's, I think, hard, of course, to balance in society. Where do you draw that line between people being able to make their own choices and not? But it seems to me that we find things tend to thrive when people do have freedom to live their lives and make their own choices, because we all really do bring something to the table. And if we can create spaces where we can all live our lives and make our choices, the ultimate result is so much better than a few people deciding this is what needs to be done to solve a problem and forcing everybody else to get in line and do what they have decided. And it's just been repeated in history over and over and over again how that doesn't work. So,
Mhm. If I can add just a little
yes.
bit, I do want to say I feel from my lens that my people were not able to have the freedoms that were afforded white individuals at that moment because of chattel slavery and things of that nature. And to bring it present day as well, we do have disabled individuals who still are not afforded the freedoms because we are not accommodating them in the workplace or even just in the spaces where they can go out to eat in restaurants. So we still have work to do with making sure we check our biases and look for everyone else. And this is just another way of just being more aware of what is out there.
Another topic that we wanted to talk about, and I feel like it goes, this conversation just slides right into it, is veganism. As we were talking about population control, my brain was thinking more about like organizations and government level, you know, directives. But with veganism, this is something that really on an individual level, we do a lot of influencing the people around us or hurting the people around us by what we say. So I'd love to hear your perspective on veganism.
Yes. So for me, I think for a personal space, when I see posts on veganism and hear vegans speak out, it's a bit hypocritical because we're asking for the rights of animals and I mean even maybe the planet's rights. But what about the rights of our fellow humans? And what does that look like in the space? If I were to come to you and say, well, I felt unheard or unseen, as I mentioned earlier, and you are telling me, well, we can't talk about that in this group. We can't talk about race in this space. You're dismissing me and what I'm coming to you about. And so, how are you saying that we are for all rights when you can't even notice my rights? And that's a big thing for a lot of Black vegans and a lot of Black people is that you're saying that you want rights for everyone, but you can't even acknowledge the rights of your fellow human, your fellow man and woman, and non binary individual. So there's that perspective. And I do just want to name sometimes, and we talked about this before, so I would love you to bring it back up, is that we can be on a high horse. And that's where a lot of the veganism and the works that we have present day, it came from a place of I'm above, you're below because you are doing certain things that I wouldn't do. So I would just love for you to, talk about that a little bit more because I got something from that as well.
I mean, I I don't remember exactly what I said, but I do think, that, in animal welfare, I guess I see it a lot, and maybe also in sustainability. We kind of decide, and I have to, and I guess maybe I'm saying this because I have to pay attention to this so closely within myself. We make a decision around what we think is right. And, for me, animals are what get me really passionate and angry and frustrated. And, so that's where I can start to get judgmental. But I feel like that doesn't help anything, because number one, if I start to get into this mindset that I somehow know better than somebody else, I start to put myself up here. Like you said, it's like I'm up here and they just need to learn, so that they'll come along and they'll understand and they'll change. And I feel like I have to be really careful to catch myself if I start to think that way or act that way, because I really don't think that's helping anything. Number one, I don't understand their perspective, their life, what they're going through. I mean, let's take it specifically to veganism. I don't know that a vegan diet works in their life. So for me to say, what you're doing is wrong and you need to change, it doesn't, it's not right. It doesn't make sense. And I don't have the perspective to be able to tell them that. And it kind of goes back to these things that we've seen in history that we can now look at and say, oh my gosh, that's like atrocious. Like, how could people have ever thought that way? But they did. And if I fast forward it to me right now, well, like, am I doing the same thing? Am I saying, like, this is my perspective and this is, I think everybody should be vegan. And so I'm going to, judge everybody who's not. Is there anything else on the veganism front that you wanted to hit on before we move on?
Yes, really quickly, you brought it up about the farming, and I do want to just ask everyone to keep in mind that there are people who still exploit farmers, especially farmers of color, for their agriculture, their goods, and their services that they do provide. And so when we are sitting up there on a somewhat of a proverbial high horse, we do need to keep in mind that everybody has some type of struggle in this world, and we are all trying our very best. And yes, that's just what I want to bring up, because it really is near and dear to my heart. And I know it is for you as well, with your family and the farmlands that you guys have out in Indiana. Wow. Did not know it was Indiana.
Indiana. I love Indiana. It's where my heart, my home is. But yeah, you're right. I think everyone is having their struggles. Like, everyone, everywhere, there is something. And I really do want to link to a couple of resources in the show notes for people who want to read more about the inequity in farmers, because I think it's a world that most of us don't ever really cross into, farming. And it is a big, big, complicated world. So we'll link to a couple of articles in the show notes about that too. So let's dive into consumerism. This was the third topic that we laid out to talk about today. Consumerism is another thing that you really do see a lot of people online promoting how to do it differently, myself included. I think there can also be, I'd be interested to hear if you feel this, but I feel like there's almost like a growing level of pressure to consume differently. So the more we understand about the way that the things that we use are made, the more we feel the pressure to do things differently. But it's still a very messed up, very complicated situation. So I would love to hear just your perspective on consumerism, from an anti-Blackness lens, and if there's things that we could be doing to talk about that better.
Yes. Dr. Robert Bullard has a really good quote where he's saying, and this is loosely quoted, the richest individuals have the highest carbon footprint, or the biggest carbon footprint. And so I do want to put that out there, because as individuals of color, Black women are paid 62 cents to the white man's dollar, and Latinx individuals, especially Latinx identifying women, they are paid 53 cents to the white man's dollar. So even less than what we have in my world. With that being said, we cannot afford the newer models, the newer things, and we do tend to buy used. Me, myself, I've never owned a very brand new car. I've always bought used. We do thrift, and I know that's a big thing now. It's like a trend that started, but I think for so long, we've always just had either hand-me-downs or thrifted. And we are unable to, I wouldn't say buy to waste, but we tend to reuse most of everything that we do purchase. And so I think that's important to name when we go out there and we have this perspective that everyone is out there consuming. It's important to know who you are talking to and who are you trying to lecture on things. I think that's the biggest thing that I do want to touch on. It's that, coming from a place of, I know better than you, and this is how you can recycle. I think we've been doing that for quite a while because we had no choice.
I love that you use the word lecture, because you said when you need to go out and you need to lecture somebody on something. And I think that's like such a good way to catch ourselves, right? It's like we were talking about the high horse, right? But it's like, yeah, like when you feel like you need to go out there and you need to lecture people about something, that's probably a red flag to take a step back and say, wait a minute, like, do I really need to go lecture people about this? And what's the right approach? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So true. And I think there is so much to be learned from frugal living as well. I mean, as I, day after day, month after month, I continue to research these different topics and get deeper into them as my show takes me into them or my life takes me into them. And I am finding more and more that a frugal way of life seems to be pretty well connected with sustainability. And it's interesting that the statistic you brought up right at the beginning there about the carbon footprint, it's like so much of sustainability is talked about in that world of the big carbon footprint, cut down my consumerism, cut down my consumption. And absolutely, for any of us that have room to move, definitely, please like work on cutting down consumption and consumerism. It definitely helps, but it doesn't apply to everyone, right? And I think there's so much information out in the world now, and a growing amount of things that we can learn to be able to take into our own power to keep things in circulation, whether it be through thrifting or swapping or mending or upcycling, or just taking care of our clothes better by not washing them so much. And that's just clothing, like electronics, like trying to find ways to repair electronics. So I want to have you leave us with one simple idea. This is something we do here on this show. We try to bring everything around to one simple thing that everyone who's listening and watching, and you and I, can walk away with and try in our lives, that will ultimately make a difference for people, animals, and the environment. So what do you have top of mind?
Top of mind for me is language. It's so important that we are aware of what we're putting out there into the atmosphere, what we're speaking out. If people believe in divine energy, and language is so important. One, because we are trying to maintain autonomy. As we're trying to tell someone what we know, what we've learned about sustainability in the environment, it's so important to not allow that person to feel small or to have them shrink. And so it's so important to keep and maintain autonomy as well as maintain dignity, because we are all humans and we are all, like you said, beautiful souls. And so what makes one soul more beautiful than another, and so that is so important. I'm so glad you named that. So when it comes to things that could be, if we could sum up this podcast, this amazing episode, I'm on it, I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I would say just be aware of the language that you are putting out there.
I was just thinking that as you were saying that it really does put a good summary to everything that we were saying, be aware. And you mentioned making sure that the other person's not shrinking. And I think that is also something that we can really be aware of if we get out of our own head and our own agenda and our own strong, passionate feeling of what we need to share and actually like observe and listen to how that energy is being received by them. I think, yeah, gosh, it could just go such a long way. How does everybody get a hold of you? So I know like you do a few different amazing things in this world. You work as a therapist. You obviously go into organizations and you consult, and you're an author with a book called Worthy, a mindset companion for women of color entrepreneurs. So tell us a bit about the things you do and what the best way is for people to get in touch with you.
Yes. So I know the book is geared towards women of color. I think that was so important to name because women of color are only receiving 0.2% of the venture capital funds that we have out in the world. I think that was important to name because we often find ourselves having to have side hustles or do things in order to get the money. And when I say do things, I was like, wow, that didn't sound right. You know what I mean? We're doing as much as we can to get this money in order to fund our businesses. Yes. And so I created a mindset companion because I know how hard it is. I struggled myself with creating my private practice for therapy and like, oh, I can't afford this. I'm still using, I know we're talking about consumerism. I'm using a refurbished laptop from 2015 and I would like to upgrade so that I can have the things that I need in order to serve my clients. But those are just the things that I can't have right now until I'm able to get my funds up. So I do want to name that. And so the Mindset Companion is all about how it is difficult at times, but you will get there and things will happen. You just stay the course. And how others can reach me. If you're in an organization, if you belong to an organization that would like to have me speak, you can visit RSP, that's my initials, consultingllc.com, and you can find all the information there. And if you want to follow me and all the amazing things that I might or might not say, I'm at Arise Counseling on Instagram.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. I love the book, The Companion. I just feel like, I am not a woman of color, but I can just feel like how much value it would provide to even me. I think that a mindset companion is just amazing. So anyway, where exactly do people find that? Is that on your website?
Yes, that is on my website. If you were to go to my Instagram at Arise Counseling, ARISE, there's a little link and it will take you directly to where you can get the book. And even if you are a white person listening or watching, I know you know someone of color, you should, and gift them the book.
You should. Hopefully. I hope so.
Yes, hopefully. Please do. After this episode, go out and make a friend. Have tea. Yes, with a friend of color. Yes.
Yes. It's awesome. It's awesome. Thank you so, so much. I have just loved having you here. Love the conversation. Thanks to everybody who is watching and listening. And we will be back soon with the next episode. So bye.